It's yet another draft profile day on Locked On Coyotes as we get ready to discuss more of the top prospects in the 2022 NHL draft. We're going to get to one of the top ones in Matthew Savoie today. Russ Cohen from Locked On Flyers is going to help us break it down on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlik right next to me on video. We want to thank everyone for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and that does mean we'll never have a paywall. It's another draft profile day, so we're talking Matthew Savoie on today's episode. We have a prospects expert ready here joining us, getting ready to help us talk about Matthew Savoie, one of the top prospects. Russ Cohen, the host of Locked On Flyers, and I think you do a lot of other things, including a prospects writer for SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. Russ, thanks for joining us on today's show.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
Happy to have you.
Let's get into this because this is an exciting one to talk about because let's put it this way. We decided to talk about Matthew Savoie today because we talked about Gunther earlier this week. For those who follow the WHL playoffs, Gunther's team, the Edmonton Oil Kings, are in the Eastern Conference Finals in the WHL playoffs against the Winnipeg Ice, the team that Matthew Savoie, top prospect in this year's draft, plays on. So it only makes sense.
It does. The Ice are a powerhouse too. Like, the funny thing is I don't follow the leagues closely. I'm always following the players and the prospects, but you get some info over the year. When you start watching a lot of video, you watch some full games. I watch some full games, and so they're both really good teams, but the Ice are really loaded.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, I was like, Gunther seems like the top player of the Oil Kings. I'm seeing just a lot of Winnipeg Ice players on the stats for the WHL playoffs. It kind of makes me feel like, is the Ice like a top team compared to the Oil Kings who are just kind of there, or is it a little bit more even? Like, prospects are always kind of like a crapshoot, just like trying to look at it because you're like, I can never really tell what's going on deep in this one. But definitely glad to have you here because Savoie is a very interesting player. I'm not sure he's third overall, like, worthy, but that's a big question to have, but it'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, look, if I had a team and I was picking third overall and I knew that Shane Wright's gone and it's up to Slafkovsky, Cooley, and Savoie, I'm having the conversation because Savoie, I think, is getting marginalized because of his size. We weren't really doing that for a while. Then now it seems like ever since you got to be harder to play against of a year ago, now it seems like that's a thing again. So if that's a thing again, then it's kind of like, let's have the conversation because Savoie, he makes players better. He might be playing on the wing right now, but he could play center. Some people might just summarily dismiss that. But again, by the time Savoie's in the NHL in 2-3 years, maybe there will be smaller centers. You don't know. I don't know. A lot of times you have to draft guys looking at what the league might be, not what it is now, because it changes every time. Every time a cup team wins, this league is a copycat league, and teams all of a sudden take on a different persona, start drafting a different way. So everybody's all in on Slafkovsky right now, which is fine. I'm not sure I would take him with the second pick, though, to be honest. I don't think I would because he doesn't play a complete game. It's great that he's killing it in the World Championships, but again, you also play against teams like Norway, and it's at the end of the year, and guys have a lot of mileage on them, and still, young player doing well. It's a portion, it's a little bit of a window that you have that you should have been watching the whole season anyhow. So when you look at Savoie, he's been great from start to finish. He's more than a point a game in the playoffs. There's really nothing you can look at and say he's had a real dip or you're worried about something. I interviewed him. I believe in his leadership abilities. I believe in his abilities to make line mates better. I think that's where you also see some of these great point totals on Winnipeg. Like the Flyers have a prospect on there, Connor McLennan. Like if you play on a power play with Savoie, you're getting points. That's a thing. So, I don't know about that with Slafkovsky yet. I don't think anybody really does because you haven't really seen him in North America. So it's hard to really track that part of his game. So I think even in the third spot, I'm having the conversation and I might just do it because this is a speed league. I get Slafkovsky is kind of like that unicorn. And, I was reminded by somebody used me against me when they called me and they said, hey, a couple of years ago, you put Brady Tkachuk second when nobody else was. And I'm like, yeah, I did that because I know he was like a bull in a china shop and he could score and he has a lot of skill, but he also can be a real jerk and change a game. But I did that because he also had a bloodline too. I counted the bloodline a little bit. I don't get crazy with that. Now Slafkovsky, doesn't have a known bloodline for me, so it's kind of like, well, what else does he do? And he does some other things. The things he does really, really well. But like I look at Savoie and I'm like, all right, great on the power play, terrific speed. He understands 5-on-5. He is a two-way guy. He's not a guy that abandons defense. He is like another kind of like coach on the ice. I feel like this guy really understands hockey to the point where it's not like just, hey, he's got a good hockey IQ. It's more than that. Like he's one of those guys. I think he's one of those guys like Claude Giroux where they can point on the ice in between plays when they're going to do a face-off or something and get a play set up because of what's going on the ice. He's able to make those kind of adjustments. That's a good thing to have.
And that's one of the awesome things to hear. And I think, based off all the stuff that you've been telling me, telling us so far, I kind of think back to only just a couple weeks ago when you and I were on the round table, right after the lottery, and you mentioned Savoie's name as definitely in the top 5 in your eyes, and I believe you even used the word that you see him as one of the most skilled or talented. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, I think he said most talented.
There you go.
Just overall.
Which is huge. Go ahead, Carl.
Oh, I was just going to say, if there's anything the Coyotes need right now, it's talent, because that is definitely a deficit for the lineup this past season and probably the upcoming season. And the foreseeable future, there's going to be a lack of talent.
Yeah, if you in the future could have him, and let's say he's not playing center, so him, Keller, Schmaltz, man, you'd have a fast, skilled line, wouldn't you? I mean, that would be a top line that could actually compete. I feel bad. I mean, Keller's really had a rough go of it. He could really score like 80 points, but you have to have the guys with you to be able to score 80 points. So for him scoring 65 sometimes on the Coyotes, I look at that and say, I think people take him for granted sometimes.
Oh yeah, we definitely had the Keller recap episode, and it was an interesting conversation. He was really great this season. Could have been even better if he didn't get hurt. That was just a brutal injury. But I mean, I think one of the things that we're looking at for any kind of draft pick is how are you going to look with Clayton Keller in the next couple of years? Because I think for both Robyn and myself, like that's where we see, the top line being like Clayton Keller, maybe Nick Schmaltz, and someone else. And I mean, Savoie, could he be that? I'm not sure, but definitely has a lot of interesting qualities.
Yeah, he has interesting qualities. But if Slafkovsky were to go second, and because Arizona's third? Is that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if Slafkovsky, because there's a rumor maybe the Devils take him second. If they take him second, and now you're looking Cooley against Savoie, it's an interesting battle there because Cooley's really one of the only natural centers in the draft, and he really has amazing hands. He probably has better hands than Savoie, and he's just as fast. He's bigger, So then you get out of that whole, well, do you worry about the guy being 5'9" conversation?
I mean,
And
he's 5'10", so you say bigger.
Yeah,
It's a little bit bigger.
a little bit bigger. I thought he was 5'11", but okay, you're probably right. And then you have to look at it up the middle. What do the Coyotes look like up the middle in the future? So then it's kind of like Cooley is worth more than Savoie, knowing that he's going to be a guaranteed center. Savoie, if he plays on the wing, then you're really looking for more points out of him. Like you're hoping he's like a 75-point guy. Just this is Anna, by the way. She's deaf, but she likes watching broadcasts sometimes. Right now, she's actually watching the Oilers game. She does tend to like late night hockey, and she's deaf. So if she starts screaming, then I'll take her out of the room. But so far, she's being good. But getting back to it, I think for the Coyotes' purposes, I think they could do without the center only because I feel like you have Schmaltz, you have another center that's pretty good too. Now my name's escaping me. So I think they might need the more dynamic player, and I think Savoie is more dynamic than Cooley. Cooley is just a safer bet.
Which makes sense. Which I think we can talk more about that in just a sec. 'Cause we do have to use some house clean items. To let everyone know about actually our friends at Rock Auto, because here in Arizona, the summer means the warmer temperatures, which means there's also breakdown season. A lot of cars will go ahead and break down in the middle of the road here in Arizona, and you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the one to be breaking down in triple-digit heat. Might as well get yourself ahead of the game and get parts from rockauto.com, because you can save a lot of money, 50, even 100%, on parts than if you were to go to a chain store or dealership, because they go ahead and go from their direct warehouse and they have everything: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, absolutely anything you can absolutely think of, and it is reliably low for every customer. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, so you can absolutely trust these guys. I want you guys to check it out yourself. You can go to rockauto.com and see the parts all available for your car or truck. And while you're there, be sure to write "Locked On" in their "Hide Your Hear About Us" box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So, Russ, another couple things that I was thinking about, and it kind of came to that idea as you were mentioning with, that debate between like Cooley or Savoie, and I think one of the things that keeps to me is like what exactly is going to go through Bill Armstrong's mind, because and as you kind of said, it is like, does he go with that safer bet, or does he go with who's like the more talented, or the one that's going to be more versatile? That's going to be a huge question I have in my head, because Bill Armstrong, this is only his second draft. This is only his second time he's done something, and so far he's impressed. I mean, he picked up Gunther last year, which tells us something. But
yeah, they have some good scouts there, and the scouts ultimately make most of the decision, and rarely does a GM override them. I'll read you a quote from Savoie that I thought was impressive. He's like, "With my size and speed that I play at, I finish checks, and I'm aggressive in doing that. I'm not afraid to go in the corners and battle. It's not like I'm throwing my weight around, but I like to think I'm pretty strong. I'm a pretty strong guy. I think I can hold my own, playing the game fast, being able to avoid checks, slip away from bigger players. These are things that he's used to doing. So, you look at that and you say, that's what's going to make him survive at the NHL and thrive. And you see that in some players. Like, he's not Patrick Kane, but how often do you see Patrick Kane just get shellacked on the boards? Not very often.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about his size, but even like what he's listed at for his weight, he still, I think, weighs more than Clayton Keller, who added weight during the offseason. Like, when you look at what Keller was when he was drafted, I think he was like 150, and Savoie 170, I think I saw in Elite Prospects. Like, so there's definitely a lot more muscle in him. He seems like he's more prepared physically. The Coyotes have no plans to rush
He's actually
whoever they draft.
175 right now. That's what he told me.
175. Yeah, that's huge. Like definitely a quality player. Kind of reminds me of like a Max Domi type who's like small but just like heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's interesting about Domi? So in Domi's draft year, I took a long time to move him into the top 30 and kind of creep him up the list a little. People are like, what are you talking about? He's like a slam dunk, going to be great in the NHL. And I'm like, I don't know. There's some things I like and some things I don't like. And I think my caution was warranted because now in the NHL, he's kind of like a journeyman. He's okay, but he's not great. Now in London, he looked like a world beater. So, you have to sort of project with these guys and figure out, like, what is Savoie going to be? I don't think he's a top liner. Could he be on the right team? Sure. Because, again, we've seen a lot of guys who could play second line, play top line because they click with other guys. But he's definitely a second liner. And in this league, if you get a second liner and he's getting you 70 points, 75 points, something like that, you do need that. And I feel like part of Arizona's problem is they haven't been able to draft very high offensive talented guys over the years. They've gotten, Keller is about the highest one that they've gotten, as far as where you looked at it and said, all right, you can really see the skill level in this guy. But most of the times they haven't shot high enough for that.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing Carl and I have been talking about this offseason is, just some of the first round woes that the Coyotes have had. Obviously Keller was a bright spot. Chikrin was a bright spot for the defense. Barrett Hayton on the center.
I don't know. Hayton I didn't like that pick. I still don't like it. He was going to make it to the NHL. They rushed him, but he also was never going to be a very good point guy. He was going to be all right, he can play all facets of the game guy, but what's he going to get you, 35 points? Like, it's just, I didn't like where they drafted him, and then I didn't like when they rushed him.
Yeah, well, rushing has been a major problem for the Coyotes too.
I will also say, like, I think the player like that people were clamoring for the Coyotes to draft was Filip Zadina, who also did not turn out really well.
Right, and that's when I could say, hey, looks like I was wrong about that because he had a great shot. It looked like it was going to translate. He's doing better, but he's nowhere near what I thought he would be. So, yeah, I mean, that is the risk of the draft.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's kind of the problem with drafting 18-year-olds. You're just like, I don't know what you're going to do. Like, we all remember being 18. It's just like, yeah, I never would have pictured where my life is going to be at that
if you
point.
were drafting me at 18, oof.
Yeah.
Just the interview would have been an adventure. So,
It would have been a mess for just every single year between like now and then. I'd be like, yeah, I'm trying, I guess, kind of, maybe.
But I'll tell you the difference between like Zadina and Savoie. Zadina is you're drafting him on goal scoring ability, and that's a tough thing to get. It's hard to get goal scorers in this league. I think we all know that. With Savoie, while he can score goals, that's not the main gift in his game. So those other kinds of guys, the more skilled playmaking kind of guys, a lot more of those translate than the goal scorers.
Now, here's the other questions I guess that we'll probably have to bring out when it comes to someone like Savoie. And obviously, there's a lot more moving parts to this because, as Carl and I have both said, is the Coyotes are in no rush for any of these players to develop. For developing, they can do what you want. But that said, is in your mind, how soon do you see Savoie getting to the NHL? Eventually making that jump.
Yeah, I think he's 2 to 3. I think he's 2 to 3 years away. I think that's realistic. If you want to have him go back one more year for the dub, that's fine. Let him do that and let him just dominate the league. He was 7th in the league in scoring this year. Let him be 1st in the league in scoring. There's nothing wrong with that. Then, if you want to have a conversation as to where he might be, let him come into camp. You can look at him for the 8 games. even if you give him the 8 games this year just to kind of pump him up, that's fine. But don't put him in this year. I don't recommend it. But after that, I think within the next 2 years after this year is realistic to start looking at him and seeing what he can do.
Yeah, that's a huge part of kind of like our idea is we know the Coyotes are committed to the rebuild, so we know they're not in a rush to do that. There's no way that I don't think either Carl or myself see the Coyotes immediately starting one of these players that they whoever they decide to draft.
Well, if they got Slafkovsky, see the because he's a bigger guy, there will be that. Hey, why don't we at least bring him in the AHL? And if he looks good there, maybe we will call him up. I could see that temptation being there if he is there for them to draft at that time. Even though that may not be their plan, it's still they're going to look at the player and say, it's possible.
Yeah, I think the Coyotes are more like, let's keep whoever we draft away from this team next year. Just long term, it's not going to be good. I think we both expect the Coyotes to be extremely bad next year, and you just don't want to have especially a younger player exposed to that kind of environment more than you need to.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with that. Still doesn't mean they'll do that.
Yeah,
we just I think
talk is good, but
I speak for a lot of the Coyotes base out here is we just don't want to see the same Dylan Strome mistake.
Yeah, because it's funny because he has developed and he has developed in Chicago, and so that's a knock against the Coyotes' development, what it was like then, and maybe that's why they were trying to get the leg up on training methods for some of the CHL guys with John Chaika. Who knows? But in the end, Dylan Strome has talent, and they didn't know how to harness it. That's one where the fans could be upset with the organization.
I will say I have checked in with the Chicago Blackhawks people for a while, and I think they are just now saying the Blackhawks learned how to harness Dylan Strome this year, midway through. I still contend that being drafted 3rd overall has probably hurt Dylan Strome's development and career in ways that we are just now beginning to understand. Because he is a great player, but he comes with expectations that are not warranted.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that, again, it would be more of a benefit to get Savoie in that regard, because if they get Slafkovsky, they're going to have all these questions like, well, why aren't you bringing him up now? I'd almost guarantee they would bring him over regardless, because rather than letting him play overseas, they're going to be like, look, play here. Because it's kind of close. It's kind of close to the parent club, right? They can keep an eye on him. That's probably what they would do.
I mean, and I will say, that part would be a little bit fair because the Roadrunners have a lot of development down there, and they've done some good stuff in the last few years, and especially. And they have all the good players. Just this last year, they weren't there because they all got called up because of injuries. But
yeah, and look, I'm high on Soderstrom. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. It may take a little longer than even I thought, but I do like him a lot.
Absolutely, Carl. Any last things that you think we should know about Matthew Savoie?
I do want to mention one quick thing, just because since we talked about Dylan Strome, or not Dylan Strome, Dylan Guenther earlier, they did share a team, the Sherwood Park Crusaders, with the AJHL. I don't know if they overlapped because they both played very few games. Savoie and Guenther both played 4.
Oh, you're talking about during the pandemic?
Yeah, during the pandemic. But that would be a really nice connection. If they had any kind of chemistry. I think that is worth drafting.
It's interesting. I didn't ask him about it. it can't be much of a chemistry because it was just 4 games.
I mean, they did.
Um,
From my knowledge, they also did play I think a season in the Northern Alberta team in
okay.
the CSSHL, whatever.
Okay, so you see, that's one up. I didn't realize that. But also, there is a bloodline factor too with Matt Savoie. Carter, pretty damn good goal scorer in his own right. Wins a national championship in Denver this year. Could play for Edmonton in a couple of years. So that doesn't hurt. And and there is no stat for this, but a lot of times the younger brothers tend to be better. I am the younger brother of my family. I can tell you that's the case in my family. But that, a lot of times that is the case where the older brother kind of breaks the ice in the league, and then the younger brother comes in and ends up being just a little better than the older, or sometimes a lot better.
I love it.
As the younger brother of my family, I will also say that I am very much better than my brother.
Bam. That's for all the younger brothers out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything that we didn't touch on, Russ, that you think that Coyotes fans should know about Matthew Savoie and his potential to maybe get them potentially excited if he ends up, getting drafted by Bill Armstrong this summer?
No, I mean, other than like this guy's really decisive. Like when he's out on the ice, he knows what he's going to do. He's not one of these guys that sort of waits for things to break down. He's kind of like one of those guys that thinks ahead. He super coachable. Coaches love him. I think those are really big factors. Slafkovsky, I don't know. I can't tell you how coaches like him or don't. Cooley, I can tell you coaches like. But again, there's just, for me, I know the people would be like, the knee jerk is to say Slafkovsky probably has the higher end as far as for getting points in the NHL, but I still think it's Savoie. And I'm going to stick with that. I don't care about the size. I just feel like he's got it in him, and it's just not going to be denied. And I feel like he's one of those guys. And I feel like I don't want to like jinx Arizona or really any team that passes on him, but I do have a DeBrincat kind of feel. Now, he's not a goal scorer like DeBrincat. DeBrincat was a stone cold goal scorer his whole career. I kept trying to tell people, high school on the way up, every year on the way up, he scored goals everywhere. So he was going to score goals. He's not a goal scorer like DeBrincat. But DeBrincat was just, marginalized because of the size. I feel like it's going to happen with Savoie in this draft. I don't know to what degree, but if he even gets past Arizona and he goes 5 or 6, there could be some regretting down the line. That's just the way I feel.
I mean, we all have experienced the pain of watching the Coyotes draft Strome over Mitch Marner, who I think at the time was being described as the more dynamic player. How you describe Savoie. So yeah, there's definitely
like the one thing I'll say, back then with Marner, he was 155 pounds soaking wet. Speed was in the league, but they still were questioning guys surviving at that weight. And I even was at like the NHL rookie photo shoot right after his draft, like a month or two later. So he was into his training program already, and he still was 155. I didn't worry about him. Like, I love the talent level. But people in the league, there were some teams that, passed on that. So I get it. But I don't think it was clear cut. Now it's clear cut. Like now there shouldn't be any more of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's at least good to hear just a little bit. Anyways, Russ, we really appreciate you coming on. Where can our listeners find you and the work that you do?
Yeah, Locked On Flyers, first and foremost, sportsology.com. I just put an article up about Zach Bookman, a defenseman who had 102 points playing in the AJHL. So there you go. Go read that. Elite Prospects. I have a lot of good articles up there. Just handed in an article about Adam Ingram, who could be like a tremendous second-round prospect. You Coyotes fans, go look up Adam Ingram because this kid can play for Youngstown. And other places, Full Press, GTS, and that's enough. At Sportsology on Twitter.
And I think the Coyotes have every second round pick at this year's
draft. So Adam Ingram should really be a guy they look at because this kid can play, man. He's a goal scorer, but he's also 6'2", and he's probably gonna, get around 185. He's not near that yet. He could be physical. He's fast. where's he going? He's going to I forget what school right now, but is he St. Cloud? I think he's going to St. Cloud. So he'll be in a good division.
Yeah, St. Cloud.
Yeah. So he'll be in a good division. And boy, if I'm the Coyotes, I take him with my first, second round pick if he's still there.
Absolutely. That's a good thing to hear, because the Bill Armstrong round is gonna be fun. Anyways, thanks again, Russ, for coming on, and thanks all you listeners for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe. If you have yet to already, we're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. It is Robyn with a Y_LEANO. Carl Pavlock is Carl Pavlock FFH. Interact with us, ask the question you might have, and we'll answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's show. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.